Welcome, everybody. On behalf of the Fide Foundation, I'm very glad to introduce to you the GET, the Global ESG Think-Tank. In Oxford, in April 2022, we were very glad to realize how powerful is the human capital that is back in the Fide Foundation in order to solve something that is very challenging. We used to talk a lot about global ESG principles, and it's very clear and is fully supported by the whole society how significant is this area for our future. But we also need to spend time in all the difficulties. There is not going to be a blue sky picture, it's not going to be a rosy path, and this is what we were glad to realize in Oxford with all different institutions, private and public, supranational and national, from the financial markets and also from a regulatory environment, that there are so many professionals willing to spend time to discuss and to focus in which is the main goal that we need to solve in order to really embrace all these big challenges that we are now facing. The idea of the Global ESG Think Tank is pretty simple. We identified in Oxford 7 different challenges that we will quickly go through all of them in the coming minutes. But we need also to open those challenges to the whole society. We want to organize 7 plenary sessions to have an open discussions about if we really want or we should work more, we should run some research, or we should implement some workshops in order to be able to provide at the very end of those a proper white paper full of hopefully some guidelines, solutions, or at least descriptions of which are the main bottlenecks or the main difficulties that we need to overcome in the coming years. That's the goal of the Global ESG Think Tank. That's what we want to do in hopefully next year, 2023, sharing all our conclusions, our brain food all together to be able to have a truly social impact, because what is Global ESG Think Tank about is mainly just as simple as financial institutions, regulators, mutual fund associations, and all the legal community trying to engage with the society, trying also to spend time and resources in order to identify and to minimize all the challenges and the problems the ESG world is facing right now. It was discussing and working with our dear independent consultants and the stock exchanges, we were realizing also that one of the first challenges is the Balkanisation of the taxonomy. How different is the taxonomy depending on where you are, and especially based on which supranational entity is helping or committed to describe the taxonomy. We need to define some common denominator across the different ones. We need to realize which are the main differences, otherwise we can probably feel frustrated sometimes when global players and global institutions are trying to apply the same taxonomy all over the globe. The second challenge is about the metrics, and of course, we need to quantify what we are talking about, and it would be very helpful if at least we would be able to identify which are the most needed metrics in order to help the stock exchanges, for example, to engage with corporates in order to provide that data, or also to help the companies and governments and societies in order to realize which is the information that they need truly to provide in a simple way in order to be easy or at least understandable all the achievements and the goals that they are embracing when they are trying to be and to get social impact. The third challenge is more about to try to quantify the cost of transition. Sadly, in Europe, we are realizing that it's not a given, the transition, and it's not going to be for free. We need to identify, probably to define scenarios. This is an open question to the challenge number 3 working group. But in order just to mitigate the feeling of frustration if we are not achieving the goals at the right speed, in the right date that we want, just because we need to understand that we are not living in bubbles and some headwinds are going to happen today, tomorrow, and that's the reason because we truly need to identify what is the cost in order to finance and to close the gap between dreams and probably a more pragmatic and less naive approach. The fourth challenge it was brought to our attention from the investment community, and it's a very fair one. We've been improving a lot the ESG commitment in the corporate space, but all our portfolios or investments are not just made of corporates. Governments, social bonds are probably the two elephants that we need at least to face in the room. And we need also to help the investment community to tackle the ESG goals in a more efficient way in those asset classes. And this is what is going to be the main goal of challenge number 4. Challenge number 5 is about the new trends that we should embrace in the ESG regulation. Sometimes there is some misunderstandings or some difficulties in order to connect the different legal frameworks that at the end of the day is not the same when we are trying to solve the issue from a product point of view or from a client perspective. We need to work in a very coordinated way, otherwise the owner of the assets or the end investor is going to get a huge confusion and probably is going to be disappointed, and probably institutions are going to waste some time, more resources in trying to merge those different frameworks in a doable one than what we should do, that is spend our resources and time to trying to mitigate the ESG challenges that the world is suffering. Challenge number 6, and very related to challenge number 5, is sometimes we are concerned at the Fide Foundation that the ESG could end in a weird alphabet soup for the end investor. We need to help an end investor to understand the taxonomy. We need to be sure that this is not a sophisticated world full of slang that the end investor is not understanding. And we need to be very committed also into show from a pragmatic point of view which are the benefits of the ESG policies also for our end investors. And this is what we want to work in the challenge number 6. And challenge 7 is, of course, the whole community is fully against to anyone that is trying to sell or say something that is lying or trying to take advantage of the ESG revolution without the proper professionalism. That's what is greenwashing about, and we are all against that. But also it's a fair point that sometimes, even if you are trying to do your best and fully committed with the ESG principles, you can face some situations of greenwashing. Sometimes when we assess what is going on today with the eyes of 3 years' time, or we are thinking backwards what we were doing before in order to assess, maybe we can find some challenges in times of war, in times of lack of energy, in times where the E and the S could challenge, or the S and the relationship between the S and the G can create some misconceptions that we also need to bring to everybody's attention, because of course we are all against greenwashing, but also we need to help people to be brave in order to take action and not just to be too conservative, because the first priority is just not to avoid to be blamed of doing greenwashing. I think that's the challenge number 7. It's probably one of the most difficult ones, but I'm pretty sure that with the capital human that is around this table, we will be able to achieve some sensible conclusions. From a Fide Foundation, we are fully aware that this is an aspirational goal. The Global ESG Think-Tank is, of course, it's not going to be the Goldilocks that will solve all the challenges that ESG investments is facing. But we believe that spending enough time and resources, people from so many different backgrounds, will have an opportunity at least to add an incremental value to something that is so material. That is, of course, we know all the advantages and the pros of ESG principles, but we also need to face with a lot of energy the difficulties and the challenges, especially in those days that some of the principles that were taken for granted are now under review because of the geopolitical environment that we are facing. I want to share my gratitude to so many institutions all around the world, from America to Europe, from regulators to mutual fund associations, including the stock exchange, consultants, and of course the banks and the asset owners. They are all super committed, and here you have some institutions that we want to express our huge gratitude because they were always willing to help since minute number one, and we also want to invite all of you to join with an extremely humble approach. It's not going to be simple. It's not going to be probably the end of our commitment in order to solve problems. We are fully aware, but at least I think it's a great opportunity to help and to add a contribution to something that hopefully is going to change our lives. Thank you.